It's a new era of Oklahoma football. The Sooners are officially part of the SEC. Helping us break it all down, Oklahoma's first year in the conference, our good friend Tyler McComas of the Ref there in Norman. Tyler, what's going on, man? Appreciate you taking the time.
23 days when we're recording. Most anticipated football season of my life, man. I mean, the road trips I get to make, the home games we get to see. Dude, this is the most agonizing part of the offseason, right? Like April and May are just like, God, and then June and July. But these last few weeks, because training camp's here, and it's like, it should be here. It's agonizing, but I'm ready, dude. I'm ready.
Yeah, June, July, Tyler, is more so it's still far away enough where you're not letting yourself get, over-anticipated, overhyped. It's kind of out of sight, out of mind. We get about 2 to 3 weeks away, like you mentioned. That's when I start to get antsy. That's probably when most folks start to get antsy. And we're like, okay, we've talked about it enough. Let's see the football on the field. But we are going to talk about it today. And by the way, Tyler, I wanted to mention before we get going, it was great to obviously meet you in person for the first time at SEC Media Days in Dallas. Crazy to say that because it feels like we've known each other forever, but was really cool to link up. And obviously we'll do so again this season in Norman at some point. But let's talk about Oklahoma. Before we look ahead, Tyler, let's look back at the 2023 season. It was a big year, too, for Brent Venables. 10-3 overall, 7-2 in conference play. You had the bowl game in the Alamo Bowl against Arizona. Granted, what do bowl games mean anymore? But either way, a 10-win season. Oh, by the way, a season in which you beat the arch rival Texas. They went to the college ball playoff, but you beat them in the Red River Shootout. So talk about year 2 of Brent Venables when yourself and when Oklahoma fans look back on the 2023 season. What will stick out most?
When I look back at 2023, strides in the right direction, and what everyone says is, 10 wins in year 2, 10 wins in year 2. Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty crap schedule. I mean, if we're being honest with ourselves here, I mean, there wasn't a great non-conference opponent. You do have the big win against Texas, which really helps that 10-win season look better. But, Chris, it was a season of missed opportunities. You start off 6-0 and you beat Texas, and then every single week in the days following, we're looking at the ESPN FPI. And what does that really mean? I don't take it too seriously, but it's at least an interesting tool. Well, here's Oklahoma after the Texas win. They got the highest ESPN FPI chance to make the college football playoff. With the road that you had left the second half of the season, you had the best opportunity out of anyone to make the playoff, and you didn't make the playoff. You didn't even make the Big 12 championship game. So was it a step in the right direction? Yeah, it was certainly a step in the right direction for 6 and 7, but it was still a season of missed opportunities. You had opportunities to win the Kansas game. You had the opportunity to win the Oklahoma State game and be right there towards the end. So overall positive, but I still think a lot of fans look back and say, man, I wish we could have a couple of those games back, because think that they were even a little bit better with the schedule that they had of being a 10-2 team at the end of the season.
So, Tyler, on that note, again, we just spoke on Brent Venables. And again, after a tough year 1, it was a big year 2, either way, to get to that 10-win mark and get some good feelings, lay the foundation coming into this 2024 season. Obviously, Brent Venables gets the extension right before SEC Media Days, coming into his 3rd year. And then beyond that, of course, what's the vibe there in Norman around Brent Venables when it comes to being the leader of this program, not just in the short term, but the long term as well?
There's no hot seats. There's really not anyone.
Despite Vegas odds wanting you to believe there's some sort of hot seat.
Right, yeah, he was on the hot seat list. Right. The odds that came out, which is insane because he just got that extension. But everyone's all in, man. The university showed that with the extension that you're talking about, and I pull the audience as much as possible here, and everyone's all in. And here's why I think the answer to that. The blueprint. What's been the blueprint for OU to win national championships over the years? OU's never won a title without an elite defense, and they've won 7 of them. So there's a lot of examples of that. OU's never played for a national championship without an elite defense. And heck, even look at the most recent national championship winners in the SEC. I mean, defense is great defense. The standard for that has shifted a little bit with these offenses compared to what it's been 20, 25 years ago. But you're not winning a national championship these days without a great defense. I guess maybe Auburn in 2010 was the lone exception to that. But they had Cam freaking Newton, right? Just throw 11 guys on that side, and they're probably going to win. But the point is that Brent Venables is getting 5-star interior defensive linemen. You weren't doing that. You hadn't done that in a while. He's getting 5-star safeties. He's winning big-time battles with linebackers. He is building a team that more resembles what great Oklahoma teams of the past have looked like, and hopefully what national championship teams here recently across the SEC have looked like. You weren't going to be that with Lincoln Riley. And you won a lot of games in the Big 12, and you won some Big 12 championships, and you made the playoff and just to ultimately get embarrassed. But everyone even recognized during that time, this is not the way that Oklahoma has won traditionally. 59, 56, 49, 47, that's just not the way that OU's won in the past. I mean, it's more of the blueprint and the understanding of here's how we've won in the past. Here's what it looks like now, what you have to do to win a championship. And they're getting balanced recruiting classes and classes that are consistently in the top 8. I don't know if Brent Venables is going to win a national championship. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but I think that he is building a roster that is more national title-like than the previous head coach that was here, because he was going to have to outscore everyone every single week. And now with a 12-team playoff where you have to win more games, it was already difficult enough in a 4-team playoff. But Oklahoma was never going to win a national championship under Lincoln Riley and the blueprint that they've had. I think you're closer, and it's more realistic now with what Brent Venables is doing and trying to do here moving forward.
So, Tyler, let's dive into the 2024 Sooners. We'll start on the offensive side of the football. A lot of change here. Jeff Lebby to Mississippi State. Seth Luttrell taking over as offensive coordinator. Dylan Gabriel goes to Oregon. Jackson Arnold assuming the QB1 role, which, again, that's what Oklahoma wanted, right? That was by design. So Jackson Arnold's the guy under center. You've heard about it all offseason. 5 new starters on the offensive line. The offensive line is the big question for OU. Skill position's not a question in my mind. Deion Burks comes in for Purdue. He's going to be an immediate star. He joins Andrell Anthony, Nick Anderson, Jaleel Farouk on the outside. Jake Roberts and Bauer Sharp return at the tight end position. Both are veterans. And Gavin Sawchuk looking to build off a strong finish to 2023 at the running back spot. 5 straight 100-yard games to close out 2023. So he was really impressive down the stretch. When you look at this Oklahoma offense, Tyler, from conversations I've had with you, with others, this seems to be the bigger question for Oklahoma. We're going to get to the defense in a second. I'm sure why you're optimistic, why you're so high on it with all that returning experience. But offensively, are they going to be able to do enough under Seth Luttrell? What are you expecting from this Sooners offense with a retooled offensive line, a brand new quarterback, but a plethora of playmakers as well in this 2024 season?
I'm expecting an offense that could have one of the better receiving corps in all of the SEC. You mentioned Deion Burks. He was 3rd-team All-SEC preseason. I think he's going to finish higher than that, because I think that he's a guy that, yes, is extremely talented and extremely explosive, but here's the deal, Chris. He's a guy that's easy to get the ball to. Therefore, he's going to have a ton of targets. He's going to have a ton of receptions. He's going to have a ton of yards. He's going to play the slot, so you can get it to him short. Just get him in the open field. He'll go make a play. Slant over the middle. He's going to go make a play for you. Down the field, the deep ball, which I really think OU is going to attack offensively this year, you can get him the ball there as well. Pair that with Nick Anderson, who had 10 touchdowns last year, the game winner against Texas. You mentioned Andrell Anthony. He got hurt in that Texas game. He was the leading receiver. When he got injured, he's back. Farouk had a tough end of the year, but he's back. Brennan Thompson has legit track speed. All you have to do is have him healthy for about 10 plays a game and just tell him to run straight. They did have a recent injury at wide receiver yesterday on Tuesday. Jaden Gibson, who I thought was probably going to be their number 3 receiver, could be a knee injury. We'll see the severity of that and how serious that is. But I think that this is a wide receiver core that could be one of the best, maybe the best in the SEC potentially. Like, I think they're that good. But outside of that at receiver, you got a first-year starter at quarterback. And I think that he's got all the talent. Like, I don't worry for a second if Jackson Arnold has enough arm strength to be a big-time SEC quarterback. I don't wonder if he has enough athleticism to be a big-time SEC quarterback. I really don't even worry about the accuracy. It's the decision-making. And the decision-making was poor early on in the bowl game. Now, if you go back and watch that bowl game, he also had some really bright moments as well. But what's the decision-making like? Can he make decisions a half of a second, a split second faster than what he did? That's what he has to overcome. And the thing that's going to help him out the most is, a really good wide receiver core that I like. But that offensive line, man, they've got to put him in good spots. You know, with James Pierce at Tennessee coming off the edge, Missouri's going to have some dudes up front. Ole Miss is definitely going to have dudes up front. Alabama, I know it's an offensive-minded head coach, but they're still going to be good on defense as well. You're going to be facing a caliber of defensive lineman you haven't in a long time, right? So that offensive line, I think that they'll field a good five. I think they'll field a good, solid starting five. But you got to have depth on the O-line, just like every other position in this league. And how much depth do they have after that solid five that they have on the offensive line? Running back, you mentioned Gavin Sawchuk. I think that he's going into training camp, your number one guy. I think at this point in training camp, he's your number one guy. The battle is for that second running back spot. Javonte Barnes had an injury-riddled season last year after a really good freshman year. Sam Franklin, you bring in via the transfer portal. Taylor Tatum was the number one running back last year. He's a true freshman. I think they'll be solid at running back. I don't see a world where they're bad at running back or maybe even below average. But here's my question. Are they special at running back? Do they have that elite type of back? I think they have running backs. If a lane's open and they need to get 5, 6, 7 yards, yeah, they'll be able to do that. That's fine. But do they have a running back that can break that tackle at the second level and take it to the house versus on first contact just being brought down? I think this is a conference this year where there's a lot of room for running backs to emerge in this league. There's not a lot of household names in this conference. Can Gavin Sawchuk be one of those guys? I think he can be one of those guys. He's got to stay healthy, unlike a year ago. But my question with running back is not how many bodies will they have available, or it's just more of they're going to need a special talent at running back. And let's see if they do have that special talent at running back, because it's been a while since Oklahoma's had that.
So, Tyler, let's move to the defensive side of the football. This is Brent Venables' bread and butter, as we all know. Year one was rough. Things have gotten much better since. We're starting to see Brent Venables' stamp on that defensive side. He did hire Zach Alley back in January to help be his DC, but 11 of the top 13 tacklers returned from 2023. You got 3 seniors on the defensive line led by Ethan Downs. You picked up a key transfer in TCU defensive lineman Demonic Williams, who was a big-time ball player for the Horned Frogs. Danny Stutzman, Jaron Kanak return at linebacker. Stutzman may be the best linebacker in the SEC. 104 tackles a season ago, which led Oklahoma. Billy Bowman's back at safety. Again, these are preseason All-SEC guys I'm mentioning. He had 6 interceptions last season. Woody washed him back at corner, picked up Des Malone from San Diego State as well to help in that spot also. Tyler, I've talked to you about this, and we'll bring this back up. I think I heard you say this has the opportunity to be the best Oklahoma defense we've seen in over a decade, and I've heard others echo that as well. Give me your thoughts on Oklahoma's defense this season and just how good they can be.
This should be the best defense in over a decade. If it's not, and again, the bar for that hasn't been extremely high. I mean, you see Kyler Murray behind me there in 2018. That was one of the worst defenses in school history. But here's your take. Here's your big take right here. Here it comes. I think Oklahoma has a chance to have the better defense in every single SEC regular season game it plays this year. I know that's a take, and I know that that's a big take. But they have star power on the defensive side that they haven't had that. I mean, you mentioned Stutzman may be the best linebacker in the SEC. I'll agree with that. Billy Bowman is absolutely one of the best defensive backs in the SEC, and I think he's on that short list for the Thorpe this year. Dominic Williams, who you got from TCU by all accounts, man, and half of the SEC wanted him, and half of the SEC, like OU, tried to pay him a lot of money. He's a guy that can really change things for you on the interior of their defensive line, which they haven't had. So it's the star power, it's the starting 11, but it's the depth that they have, man. And Brent has even talked about that recently. It's not there's been a drop off from the starting 11 to the next 11 after that for the past couple of years. There's not that drop off, at least on the defensive side. They're going to be really good at corner. They're going to be – they have a 5-star at safety, Peyton Bowen, going into his second year, and he was good last year, who's probably not going to start because there's 2 other safeties right there that may be just better than him at this point. Linebacker is really good. Defensive line, they're not there yet as in terms of where they're at backer and safety, but they're getting there with a guy like Dominic Williams, and he's a guy that's going to eat up blocks. And Danny Stutzman's been good all on his own recently. But what does this defense look like if Dominic Williams is the player that we think that he is, and he's eating up 2 blocks every single play, caving in the middle of the offensive line? Like, OU hasn't had that interior player that can cave in an offensive line like that. He's that type of player. And I don't say that I think OU can be the best defense on the field in every single SEC game. I'm not just trying to throw out some crazy, wild, hot take. Like, the point is how much they've grown defensively. I think that there's a world where that could be the case because LSU isn't the same defense that they were for a long period of time. LSU just had one of its worst defenses in school history. Tennessee, like, I think they'll be really good up front too. But what about the back end of that defense and all of the players that they lost at defensive back last year? Tennessee could be very gettable. South Carolina, I don't view them as an elite defense. Ole Miss got some players. We'll see about Ole Miss, especially up front on the defensive line. Missouri will be solid. Obviously, the one pushback that you would probably have to me is, well, come on, you're not going to have a better defense than Alabama. And that might be true. They did lose Caleb Downs. And now you do have an offensive-minded head coach versus what you had recently with Nick Saban. I still think Alabama's going to have some athletes on that side, and I bet they still probably field a pretty good defense. But it is fair to question what the Alabama defense will look like this year and moving forward with a guy like Kalen DeBoer. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe OU won't have the best defense on the field in every single game. But, Chris, even if I'm wrong, they may have it in 6 or 7 games in the SEC this year, and that's considerable growth compared to where you were 3 years ago before Brent took over.
Yeah, Tyler, on that note, it's interesting, the transformation, and I've heard you talk about this of the Oklahoma program where forever we thought it was, the Lincoln Riley OU scoring 50 points a game. It's kind of turning back to Oklahoma, I think, winning with elite defense, becoming more defense. And that obviously is a reflection of who Brent Venables is and what he believes in. But it is interesting to see that evolution of the program. And to your point, I mean, outside of Bama, we'll see what Ole Miss is, but there's not a lot of pushback there. I could definitely see Oklahoma fielding the better defense in each of those games, and at minimum being comparable to the opponent in most every single game, no doubt. Tyler, let's talk a little special teams, if you will. Zach Schmidt's back as kicker. Luke Elzinga's back as punter, so you got those two guys back. Jaleel Farouk figures to be the top returner, both punts and kickoffs, unless I'm missing something. Maybe Deion Burks factoring in there as well. But give us an idea. What does Oklahoma's special teams look like in 2024? Is this a facet of the game that you feel like the Sooners could use to their advantage in their first year in the SEC? Maybe steal a win or two here and there.
So on my YouTube page, I kind of did a little bit of a preview last night. At the very end, I put my 3 biggest concerns. I put offensive line number 1, and I put special teams number 2. They've been bad at kicker, man. They were bad at kicker last year. You mentioned Zach Schmidt. I mean, he's missing 27-yard field goals on the road. I mean, that's a gimme kick, man. 27-yard field goals in a close game. You got to make those. And OU's going to play in a ton of close games this year. They play 8 SEC games. Is it crazy to think that like 6 of those could be one-possession games? 7 of those could be one-possession games in the fourth quarter? There hasn't been a room for error for Oklahoma, and there's definitely not room for error now in the SEC. And if you can't depend on your kicker to make a 27-yard field goal, a 33-yard field goal when it matters, that's a problem, man. And they made a switch at punter to Luke Elzinga last year. That's worked out well. He's your starting punter. He's good. But I don't think Zach Schmidt's going to be your starting kicker this year. In fact, Brent Venables at a luncheon I was at a couple of weeks ago said that Tyler Keltner, a transfer from Florida State, is the odds-on favorite to be the starting kicker. They even have a true freshman coming in who's an in-state kid, Liam Evans. Maybe he ends up being your kicker as well. They weren't good on special teams last year, man. Gavin Freeman, who was returning punts last year, really lost his confidence. Muff punts last year. He's actually at Oklahoma State now. Maybe Peyton Bowen, the former 5-star who was so electric as a returner in high school, maybe he's your guy. You mentioned Deion Burks. I think that there's a world where that could be the case as well. But they did hire Doug Deacon, special teams coordinator from San Diego State. I know, I hadn't heard of him either before he came here. But if you go back and look at what San Diego State has been, like when you think of San Diego State football the last 5 years, what do you think of? Apparently you think of special teams because that's the one area where they've been really good. So, I mean, they've got to be better at kicker. And here's the thing. I can hear that Tyler Keltner and Zach Schmidt, man, they're booming 45, 50-yarders in practice. That's great, but you really don't know what you have at kicker until your first big kick against Tennessee. until your first big kick at Jordan-Hare. I mean, right? Even in the non-conference portion of the schedule, if they're 6 for 6 in games against Temple and Houston and Tulane, that's fine. But when you're in tough environments and tough games, how clutch can you be? Can you make just make the easy ones? I don't need you to make a 52-yarder necessarily. Go make the 27, the 35s, the 41-yard kick. So all that to say, special teams is a concern. Punting, not so much, but when I think of special teams more often, I think about what type of kicker that you have. How many national championships did a kicker cost Alabama? At least one, maybe two, right? And if you want to be a team that makes a college football playoff this year and win 9 or 10 games, you're going to have some clutch kicks. And it's been a while since OU's made a clutch kick in a big game. So it's a concern, man.
Tyler, 8 starters return for the Oklahoma Sooners this season, 2 on offense, 6 on defense. And as we look at the first SEC slate for Oklahoma football, we turn our attention to the schedule. You open up 3 straight non-conference games, Temple, Houston, Tulane. Then comes September the 21st, Tyler. The SEC opener, Josh Heupel comes to town. There's so many subplots in this ball game. Oh, by the way, first SEC game in the history of Boomer Sooner. That's going to be an incredible environment there in Norman. Then your first SEC road trip at Auburn. Tricky. Jordan-Hare. I know Oklahoma fans have heard a lot about the Plains. Then you've got Red River against Texas, South Carolina at home, at Ole Miss, Maine, at Missouri, Alabama, at LSU to close out the season. Now, Tyler, it's believed that Oklahoma, obviously, of Oklahoma and Texas, Oklahoma got the tougher draw here in year one. I don't think it's really even up for debate. This looks like a schedule Steve Sarkisian himself put together. Either way, though, when you look at this schedule, I know there's a lot of takeaways. What stands out to you? Again, I know there's a lot of great road trips you and I have talked about that Oklahoma fans are really looking forward to. But, I mean, what immediately jumps out to you when you look at this schedule, Oklahoma's first SEC slate in school history?
The incredible environments that you're going to have to face on the road. Like, you get used to it in the SEC, I'm sure, but we're used to going to Ames, Iowa with 61,000 fans, Kansas State with 54,000 fans, Baylor with, like 46,000 fans. Like, right? Like, you kind of get the point there. You're going to Jordan-Hare where there's going to be 87,000. And that could be one of the more important games for Auburn the whole season, and maybe the biggest home game that Auburn has. I mean, you're just going to be playing in stadiums and environments that, frankly, you just haven't seen really in the Big 12 before. So that's what stands out. Auburn's going to be insane. LSU, Death Valley, we know about that. That's going to be insane last game of the regular season, especially if there's something on the line. Missouri hates OU. That game in Columbia is going to be insane. Heck, even Ole Miss, with all the expectation that they have, and I know that they do get Georgia at home this year, but if Ole Miss is really playing for something at that point in the year, and I think a lot of people believe they will be at the end of October, that play, Vaught Hemingway, is going to be insane as well. So you haven't necessarily been a great road team recently. You lost 2 road games last year. You're lucky to get out of that BYU game with the win. So what stands out to me is, and I look at it as fun, I can't wait to go to these environments. I'd much rather go here than frickin' Lubbock, Texas, and Waco and Ames, Iowa. But it's going to be a challenge because on paper, is OU a better team than Auburn? I believe that. On paper, is OU and LSU probably pretty comparable? Yeah, sure. And maybe the same thing with maybe even Missouri and Ole Miss. But the home field advantages in this league got to mean more, to use the phrase, right? Got to mean more in this league than it does in any other league in college football. And that matters. That matters.
Tyler, I think what's really interesting as we enter this 2024 season is there are some different schools of thinking, if you will. So Oklahoma's over under win total 7.5 in Vegas. It was 6.5 a couple months ago. And you've got this, the folks in the SEC, people making predictions, whatever, that are saying, bad timing for Oklahoma, offensive line issues. 7-5 or 8-4 would be a great year. When I talk to Oklahoma fans, that's not the energy that I receive. It, to me, and I made this joke with you in Dallas, to a point where it feels blasphemous or like I'm insulting you if I were to tell you that 7-5 or 8-4 is a good year for Oklahoma this year. How much different are the expectations in Norman and amongst the Oklahoma fan base How much different are those expectations for this season versus maybe the conference-wide media's expectations for Oklahoma this year?
Oh, I think considerably different. I was on a Mississippi radio station earlier today, and the guy was like, I think you guys can win 7 games. I think, but a lot's going to have to go right for you to win 7 games. And I immediately like, oh, I'm taking this to my audience this afternoon, and they're going to be pissed about it and ready to burn down that guy's radio station or something like that. I think it's different. Look, man, you're not going to hear anyone out here predicting this team to go 12-0. You're not going to hear anyone predicting this team to go 11-1. I don't think you're going to hear a lot of people predicting this team to win a national championship. I don't really think that this is a national championship caliber team today. And I don't think most people really believe that this team is in position to win a national championship this season. But I do believe they think they're in position to be one of the 12 teams that plays for a national championship this year and makes the college football playoff. And I think a big conversation that we've had around here is how many teams in college football could you make an argument for this year? If they go 9-3, they deserve in the 12-team playoff. Maybe not a whole lot. But Oklahoma, if they go 9-3 with that schedule, I mean, I think that there's a chance they could be in the 12-team playoff. They may be team 11. They may be team 12. But 9-3 with the wins that you would have with a 9-game or a 9-win season would stack up against most resumes that are out there. Joe Klatt said the same thing yesterday. He says, I think OU will be in at 9-3, and OU should be in at 9-3. So whereas a lot of expectations in the SEC, we heard a 6-6 last year. Our boy Chris Phillips threw out a 7-5, which got some reactions around here as well. I think a lot of people here, you ask him, it's probably is 9 wins, 10 wins, but let's make the college football playoff. That's how we're going to define success this year.
Yeah, Tyler, on that note, I mean, and I have my question marks, but what I love the passion and I love the energy because, and I feel like, and I credit you, and I told your co-host or one of your co-hosts, Travis, this as well. I credit you guys in Norman for holding it together and being respectful and being polite. And because I feel like I can see through that, Tyler. Y'all are pissed. I know it. I can see it. I can feel it. When I have conversations with Oklahoma folks, I'm like, there's an extra edge here that like they're being as polite as they possibly can, but they want to just punch somebody in the face. Like, is that a good way to describe the mentality and the energy right now? Because again, it feels as if, you know, and especially too, it's even worse when Texas is getting all this love and this hype. And I know OU fans are used to it, but Texas is the one being viewed as the college football playoff favorite, the national championship contender. And like you mentioned, it's like Oklahoma's the little buddy that gets to tag along. Like I sense this energy. And again, Oklahoma folks done a great job of holding it together. But, and I say this respectfully, there may not be a more insufferable group of people if Oklahoma turns out to be really good than Oklahoma is, just because of what they've been taking on this offseason.
Oh, dude, there's going to be so much I told you so on the internet. I mean, even look at the Lincoln Riley situation when everyone thought Oklahoma football was going to wither into a hole and die after he left for USC. Now you're seeing a lot of, trying to tell you, Oklahoma fan was right, huh? Oklahoma fan was right. Oklahoma fan was right. But yes, I mean, people are pissed around here, man. And it's not just that people are predicting them to, you know, have a sub 8-win season and not be all that competitive. And, oh my gosh, how are they going to navigate this schedule? It is about Texas. And yes, Texas did make the playoff last year, and you got to give them credit. But I think that there are a lot of people that are upset for the lack of understanding of what's happened in this rivalry for not just the last 50 years, but really for the last 25 years. Because Oklahoma has kicked Texas' ass for the last 25 years. And there's a thought that Texas is the better program or has been the better program. And then you hear guys like Paul Feinbaum say, oh, wow, I went to Norman and they got all these like statues of Heisman winners and all these national championships and conference titles. Like, whoa, guys, it hasn't been Texas that has been running the Big 12. It's been Oklahoma that's running the Big 12. It's like, well, yeah, no duh. Have you got, no one's been paying attention to what's been going on here for the past 25 years, 50 years. So yeah, there's a lot of that. And we've even heard that, well, yeah, Oklahoma, They kind of stole that one late against Texas last year. Oh, so you didn't watch the game because Oklahoma controlled that game throughout and really should have won that game by double digits. So, look, we'll ultimately find out during the season, and we're 23 days away from kicking off for OU. But you're right, man. It's going to be insufferable for everyone else in the SEC if this team gets hot. And here's the thing. I think they can. I think they're going to win their 3 non-conference schedules. You beat Tennessee, you're 4-0. You go to Auburn and win, you're 5-0, and you'll be favored in both those games. That doesn't mean you're going to win, but Vegas at least thinks that, you're favored to win that. And you've owned Texas the past 25 years, and you beat them last year. What if this team starts out 6-0, and they got the South Carolina game coming up? I mean, it's going to be a firestorm on the internets for sure if that happens for this team.
And I want to make sure, Tyler, folks understand, because we love our Oklahoma folks to tune in here. When I say the insufferable comment, I mean it as a compliment, truly. Yeah. So don't take it personally, I promise. Tyler, it's been great. Last thing before we get you out of here, you mentioned, again, the expectations, the belief is Oklahoma can go 9-3, 10-2, be right there on the verge of the college football playoff. For that to happen in your mind, is it as simple as the offensive line coming together, or is there something else, in your opinion, that has to click for this team to reach their potential?
It's a version of the offensive line, but it's the run game. Because, people who just go back and look at the stats last year and say, ooh, OU's total offense looked like this. Points per game looked like this. Well, yeah, they scored, 73 against Arkansas State last year. That's really going to skew the numbers in a 12-game season. They weren't good when they had to be running the football. They just weren't. I mean, they had opportunities late against Kansas to end that game, just run it 3 times and get a first down. They couldn't. Defense gave you back-to-back turnovers. Offense, go pick up a couple of first downs and end it. Couldn't do it. Defense is keeping you in this game against Oklahoma State. They're giving you a chance to win. Go run the ball. Go in this game against Oklahoma State. Couldn't do it. So I don't worry about what the yards per carry average is going to look like for this team. But when you're in a close game against Tennessee, close game against Auburn, close game against Texas, close game against just about every single SEC team you play, you've got to be able to move someone off the line of scrimmage late in the game. Assert your dominance. Go pick up a first down or 2. Can this offense do that? Because they couldn't do it last year when it mattered. And to win games in this league, you got to close games in this league. You got to be good late in the fourth quarter. And a big part of that is, are you be able to run the ball late? So that is kind of a version of the offensive line, yes, but that's also to the running backs as well. Do they have a special back that can pick up yards late when they need to? I think that's going to be more of an important factor than maybe most people realize with this team.
Tyler McComas of The Ref in Norman, Oklahoma, does a fantastic job covering all things Oklahoma Sooners. Tyler, let folks know where they can check out all your work.
Yeah, YouTube. I had a big take of why Oklahoma will make the college football playoff on Tuesday night. So Tyler McComas on YouTube, go subscribe there. And then our app, I'm on from 2 to 6 every single day. 2 to 3, we talk recruiting, which I don't know how many radio shows out there talk recruiting for an hour, but we have that covered. From 3 to 6 is heavy football, SEC football. KREF in the App Store. Download our app. It's free. You can listen to us worldwide. So just ready, man. We'll be insufferable. If they start off and play good football, you guys will be insufferable towards us. If told you guys weren't ready for the SEC, tried to tell you. So something's going to happen. Something's going to happen here in the next couple of months.
Well, Tyler, I can assure you of this. I will not be one of the insufferable ones. Believe me. I love the Oklahoma fans that we've interacted with, engaged with, and yourself too, man. I'm not one of those, we'll put it this way, hazing Oklahoma and Texas on their way into the league. I think that's kind of interesting energy, to say the least. Tyler, always a pleasure, my friend. Looking forward to our trip to Norman this season. When it happens, we'll be letting the audience know. But Tyler, it's always a pleasure. Grateful to call you a friend, and let's definitely do this again soon.
Anytime, man. Anytime.